Digest, a chapter of living history into your classroom. In a time of grave crisis, President Johnson speaks to his countrymen.
My fellow Americans, as President and Commander-in-Chief, it is my duty to the American people to report that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply. That reply is being given as I speak to you tonight. Air action is now in execution against gunboats and certain supporting facilities in North Vietnam, which have been used in these hostile United States. The importance of the struggle for peace and security in Southeast Asia.
The year is 1954. French Indochina is in her death agony. And out of the fire and flame, heartache and heartbreak, the Republic of South Vietnam is born. This is the story of that tortured land, her people, and freedom's stake in Southeast Asia. The story begins as South Vietnam rebuilds. Willing hands are soon at work, making new homes and new dreams. For these are a determined people, determined to find their own future and decide their own destiny. The rice fields of South Vietnam are to be the backbone of the infant nation's economy, sustaining the land and the people as rice has done for decades, generations, centuries. Twice each year, the fields bring forth their abundant harvest. Rice for consumption at home. Rice to be exported abroad. Rice, the staff of life for half the people of the world. The work is hard, but the farmers of South Vietnam carry on and move forward. In 7 years, they double their production of rice. And South Vietnam becomes one of the few Asian nations to raise more rice than it consumes. The country's craftsmen do their part too in building a strong economy, practicing the arts and skills that have made their products unique, unmatched. Heir to a civilization thousands of years old, this new nation is old and yet young, ancient and yet modern. A land proud of its past, eager to claim its future. The South Vietnamese are a devout and peaceful people, most of them disciples of the Buddha, who 2,500 years ago preached a gospel of brotherhood and love among all peoples in all lands. It is a doctrine rejected by North Vietnam and her communist ruler, Ho Chi Minh. Architect of the bloody civil war that drove the French from Indochina, he now watches covetously as South Vietnam, in peace, prospers and progresses. And then the communists strike, spreading a terror that recognizes neither age nor sex, a terror that strikes again and again. Despite the brutal aggression, South Vietnam struggles to secure her future. In schools and in other places, the infant nation pursues the many roads that lead to all men's distant dreams, beginning with the very young, bending the twig to help the tree grow strong. In every activity, at every age level, the emphasis is on initiative, self-reliance, independence. And there is a joy in learning, for the mind and for the stomach, too. In the first decade of independence, enrollment in the nation's elementary schools more than doubles. Advanced courses and scientific research provide further proof of South Vietnam's concern for the future. Young chemists test and perfect compounds and solutions, seeking and finding, putting science to work for the farmers in the fields, helping to eliminate the insects and pests that blight their crops, assuring a richer, fuller harvest. As a result, agriculture in South Vietnam changes more in a single generation than in the 100 years before. From the good earth that has given so much, the resourceful nation takes even more. Deposits of coal, largely ignored in the past, are mined and exploited, providing a strong foundation on which to build a great new era of prosperity. And tapping the rubber trees of South Vietnam, the nation reaps still another abundant harvest. More than 250,000 people are employed in processing the precious latex for export to cities around the world. The nation undergoes an industrial revolution, too. In 1960, there is but a single cotton weaving plant in all of South Vietnam. Today, the country is producing 80% of all the cotton fabric used by her people. Many nations share South Vietnam's pride in her progress. Others do not. The aggression from communist North Vietnam continues, and a people weary of war must fight again in self-defense. And young men who want only to live in peace find that there is peace only in death. A tortured land and a troubled people must endure a new agony, a new anguish. But the South Vietnamese do not grieve alone. Others share their loss and their sorrow, and one nation determines to come to their aid. The United States agrees to provide military assistance to embattled South Vietnam. It begins on a modest scale, but by 1964, America's financial involvement will come to some $3 million a day, or more than $1 billion a year. U.S. equipment clogs the highways of South Vietnam. American GIs come too, and soon they are a familiar sight on the sidewalks of Saigon. With a population of 2 million, Saigon is one of the most modern cities in all of Asia. The old world and the new meet on its busy streets, sharing a common crusade for peace. At first, the GIs in South Vietnam are to serve only as advisors and instructors. The United States does not seek active participation in the war against the communist Viet Cong guerrillas. It wants rather to guarantee South Vietnam the right to be left alone, to chart her own course in her own way. For South Vietnam stands at the gateway to the rice-rich nations of Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and East Pakistan. And the hungry neighbors to the north, Red China and Communist Vietnam, have said, a grain of rice is worth a drop of blood. And so American involvement grows deeper and more dangerous. GIs work with Vietnamese soldiers in combat areas and frontline positions. They receive orders to shoot back if fired upon by communist guerrillas. The number of U.S. advisors grows from a few hundred in the late 1950s to more than 20,000 in 1964. The war the Vietnamese must fight is a shadowy war against a phantom and fanatical enemy. The Viet Cong seem to be here, there, everywhere, hitting and running, running and hitting, spreading their terror throughout the countryside and to the very outskirts of Saigon. There are no front lines and no rear lines. There are, in fact, no battle lines at all. Most times, the Red guerrillas must be captured one by one. And for each of the Viet Cong taken prisoner, there seems always 5 more ready to fight in his place. Day by day, American pilots and personnel play a bigger part in the stepped-up aerial war against the communist guerrillas. Mission after mission, they risk their lives over the green jungles that hide the enemy. The danger is great, but the stakes are high. Loss of South Vietnam will imperil the future of all Asia, a continent that is inhabited by 2/3 of the people of the world. It is with this danger in mind that the United States has maintained and strengthened its commitment to guarantee the independence of South Vietnam. Aggression unchecked, says President Johnson, is aggression unleashed. To check, to stop, to halt, and to turn back communist aggression. American soldiers are today carrying out their dangerous missions in South Vietnam. In combat, they do not seek, but cannot run away from. GIs are fighting and dying in the jungles and rice paddies that are in 1964 the frontier of freedom. In these faraway places with their unpronounceable names, the 2 great ideologies that divide our world are locked in mortal combat. The cost of preserving freedom in South Vietnam is high. It is recorded every day in the helicopters that return from the front. In this hour of grave crisis and great trial, the land and the people can take comfort, find solace in the knowledge that they are not and will not be alone. More than 200 United States fighting men have found their final rest in South Vietnam. These honored dead have shed their blood, laid down their lives, offered the last full measure of their devotion for an ideal, a belief, made sacred in the 188 years since our nation's founding. It is the ideal, the belief, that all men in all lands have the right to find their own future in peace and in freedom. To widen your horizons, to stimulate your interest in things going on about you, Wolf & Dessauer, one of America's great department stores, has presented the Screen News Digest as a public service.